Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel that helps us understand narcissism and narcissistic relationships. We're going to take on an Am I the Asshole? A way to sort of use other people's stories to further understand toxic relationships. So here we go. This one asks, am I the asshole for giving my mother-in-law a fake copy of my house key and exposing her at Christmas dinner? So this person says, I want to preface this by saying that I am a 34-year-old woman, married my husband, who's a 37-year-old male, a year ago. His mother is snoopy and annoying. She can't help it. That is just how she is, as my dear in-laws say. My husband and I purchased a new house recently. My mother-in-law kept pushing to get an emergency key. She promised that she would only use it in an emergency, but given the fact that she had an emergency key to our old apartment and walked in on us being intimate twice, but my husband didn't think it was a big deal, I couldn't trust her, so I just sent her a fake key to the new house after she kept pushing, and she had a smug look on her face after I hand-delivered the emergency key to her at her house. Days had gone by, and on Christmas dinner, my mother-in-law angrily called me out on the fact that I gave her a fake copy of the house key. She shamed me for doing this in front of everyone, but in my defense, I asked her how she found out, and she said days ago when she came over at 4 p.m. while my husband and I were out, that's when she found out. I reminded her, didn't you promise you wouldn't use that key unless there was an emergency? So you tried to get in when there was no emergency, and you broke the promise you made to us. She looked red in the face, and the other family started staring, and some even laughed at her for the face she made. She suddenly got up from her seat and rushed into the kitchen, where she had a huge meltdown so loud the next-door neighbors must have heard. Literally, I've never heard a 60-plus-year-old woman throw a tantrum like that. Needless to say, dinner went awkwardly, and my husband and his sister were giving me looks. My husband went off on me in the car and said I lied and manipulated and humiliated and exposed his mom, and said he wouldn't have let me get away with it had he known. We had an argument, and he is demanding I apologize to his mother for my childish behavior and for ruining Christmas dinner for the whole family. And then, interestingly, the woman went on to show her husband some of the comments right here on the Am I the Asshole page, and he got furious, tried to take her phone, tried to delete it. So she's asking the question, though, am I the asshole? And to which I'd say absolutely not. Everyone, you gotta do your homework on the in-laws. Now, you may have horrible, narcissistic, toxic in-laws, but the person you're marrying has cut off from them. That's a very different story than someone who's all in. The fake key ploy was a great one, right? And what was interesting, and again, this is where the narcissistic folks, the hostile folks, the toxic folks, they can dish it out, but they can't take it. That's the inherent entitled hypocrisy that we see in these kinds of personalities. The mother-in-law had no problem calling out the daughter-in-law about the fake key at Christmas dinner in front of everyone, right? Perhaps she wasn't prepared, because my guess is this mother-in-law has been deeply enabled by this family system. She acknowledged it as much. They said, that's just how she is, right? The ultimate enabling term, that's just how they are, right? So she then says, why did you use the key? It was meant to be for an emergency. And so then that, as always, when people wonder, like, what happens if you corner a toxic person? They throw a rageful tantrum for the ages, or worse, sometimes they even act out violently. So she cornered the mother-in-law. You weren't supposed to do this. You said it was for an emergency. You wouldn't have known this unless you used it. And when you used it, it wasn't an emergency, right? So, not surprisingly, toxic mother-in-law throws a dramatic tantrum, right? The test of a marriage is how your partner stands by you. It's not like you're asking them to choose sides, but his mother's behavior was really toxic. His incapacity to see it shows him to be his mother's enabler, number one, Number two, to choose his mother over the person he was planning on spending the rest of his life with. And number three, it's quite possible that maybe the husband's toxic himself. That wasn't established in this, so we don't know that. All we know is that the mom has been deeply enabled by the son, and then is saying that you manipulated her, you humiliated her. No talk as to how the mom called her out at the table about the key. Narcissistic people get their fuel through the enablers. Because if nobody was enabling them, they're just going to have to sit there and be toxic in a corner by themselves. I'm not saying they're going to see the light and change, but maybe they'll know they're a little bit more on watch. She felt emboldened to say that at a Christmas dinner, at a holiday dinner, and say, hey, why'd you give me a fake key? What did she think the daughter-in-law was going to say? Oh, I'm so sorry. And it was interesting that she even made the accusation it was fake rather than you gave me the wrong key. So she immediately made a hostile assumption about her daughter-in-law. She didn't even hold space for, I don't think you gave me the right key to the house. So, but I get a lot of requests on this channel for, can you do more videos on in-laws? In-laws are tricky because they're almost like a narcissistic person once removed. You meet the person you're in a relationship with, then they bring their own stuff with them. And if they don't have their own narcissistic family in check, you're in for one hell of a wild ride. I have clinically worked with people in this situation, certainly have advised on these situations, and have observed many of them. And if that person you're married remains an enabler, you're going to have a really, really, really rough ride unless you get some ground rules. I just think that this person is, they've only been married a year. I don't know how long they were together. And they're not young. They're both in their mid to late 30s. So, and mom's not young either. She's only in her 60s. So it's not like they're going to count down the clock on mom. So it's a really, really interesting and problematic kind of a conundrum because at the end of the day, the mother-in-law, the daughter-in-law suspected something about her mother-in-law. It was true. And I'll tell you, this action speaks to something that a lot of people in family, particularly in-law narcissistic or toxic relationships have to go through, is that they often feel very powerless, that nothing they say to their own spouse is going to get through. Like, do you understand what your mother's doing? No, 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 no. So in this case, the person who wrote this, Am I the Asshole? She's probably feels so powerless that she's like, okay, I'm going to test this out. I'm going to get my gotcha moment. The problem with the gotcha moment with a narcissistic person, it never means they're ever going to cop to it. It just means that they're going to blame, shift, and gaslight and make it seem like you are the perpetrator, you're the problem. There is no winning in these relationships. And then you have to ask yourself the deep question, if this person is always going to choose their toxic mother, where do I fit into this kind of relationship? All I can say is good luck to them, and you know, you just plan on, unless as long as she stays married to this dude, she is going to have a mother-in-law showing up. In fact, I would say, as long as your mom's going to keep showing up, maybe we should stop having sex because that's embarrassing. If you can't win, maybe you just try to out-manipulate them. Thanks again.